I'm just gonna read a part of it because since we've gone over twice, this might be extra long. So you can decide to, when we're done, you can decide whether or not you want to keep it in as a treat so people can hear something that I've written or cut it out.
Sorry, my mind just went really dirty there when I heard extra long. Keep it in there, and I'm just like,
Oh
oh
yes.
no,
Oh
ignore
yes,
me,
baby.
ignore
Extra
me.
long. Keep it in. Ah yes.
Or you can just cut this part out and you can have it as its own separate little thing.
Well, Nicola's little dirty thought is definitely staying in. I might just clip it and save it for later.
Oh come on, it's 2 a.m. for me.
Yes, I'm gonna I can read the whole thing or it can be like I can read part of it. But I had tried my hand at trying to write a horror one shot or close to a horror one shot.
Horror, horror,
Horror.
rawr.
So, I do write fan fiction. I'm just gonna let anybody out there know I do write fan fiction, and I have written some fan fiction for Red Dead Redemption. So this one is I do ships. So this one is a Arthur Tilley ship, and this one's just called Revenant, and it's from one of my one-shot collections. I'm not going to tell you who I am, but Jackie is probably going to link it at some point. um, a man leaned against the brick wall of the alley. The putrid scent of trash and shit assaulted his nose, and he wishes that his bosses had chosen a different location for their business. Saint Denis was full of places that would have been better, but after a man had robbed their gambling den above the gun shop, his bosses became paranoid. So they moved to this little hellhole in the wall. Not that he would ever voice his displeasure. Angelo Bronte was not a man to be crossed, as a group of so-called outlaws soon found out. He had heard that a couple of the group died when they were ambushed by Pinkertons out by the river that ran near Rhodes. Or was it the night folk? He couldn't quite recall. The news article spoke of the triumphant Pinkerton agents that took down the notorious second-in-command Arthur Morgan. Commemorations and posthumous awards were listed for all participants. A crippling blow, the article shouted, to the Dutch Vanderlyn boys. It was a perfect piece of propaganda. Many Desians of Saint Denis went to bed that night in relief that their government officials and police department were doing their jobs. The Vanderlyn gang melted into the shadows, dissipating like smoke from a cigarette. An impressive cover-up for what actually happened, or rather, what he had heard that had happened. According to rumor, the Pinkertons made a mistake. They stormed the river shore hideaway of the gang in droves, quickly pinning the gang members that were there down. Pictures of tents riddled with holes like Swiss cheese, the trees and plants completely shredded. It didn't take a genius to know that couldn't have come from regular guns. Acquired a rumor whispered that they were armed with a Gatling gun from the military fort. In the ensuing shootout, there was a casualty, the mistake, if you could call killing a woman one. They said that the man, Arthur Morgan, let out an inhuman moan when the bullet struck her. He had grabbed her fallen body and took cover behind an upturned table. Until then, both sides had not suffered any casualties. Until then, both sides were likely to have run out of bullets and have to resort to fist. Until then. They say that the man vaulted the table and roared. Some claim to have heard it as far as Emerald Station. Others claim that people as far as Annesburg had heard it. Whatever the exaggeration was, his roar put fear in the hearts of the men that were there. That man, beast, tore those men apart. He remembers the bodies being wheeled into the police station cellar, their bruised and bloodied faces staring listlessly up at the sky. Men with bent and broken bones like discarded marionettes tossed thoughtlessly cast aside by a child. They cried out for their mothers, lovers. In the following weeks after the event, those men quietly retired. One man did that. It took the remaining forces emptying the rest of their ammo into him to stop the carnage. His hand was still closed tightly over the broken neck of an officer, the officer that had shot the woman. The man pulled a cigarette and lit it, shuddering against the slight chill in the air. Taking a long drag from the cigarette between his fingers, he glanced around the alleyway. Empty bottles, bent cans, and old used newspaper littered the floor. The brick walls were crusted with unknown substances, and he made a note to have them triple wash his clothing when he got back. The clatter of a can drew his attention to the opposite opening of the alley. He stepped slightly away from the wall and stared in the direction of the noise, squinting into the darkness. The opening of the alley was empty. For a tense few seconds he waited. The hair on his arms rose and his heart swooped in and out of his chest. He waited, and nothing happened. Shaking his head, the man relaxed his posture. It must have been a cat passing through, or a rat. He brought his forgotten cigarette back to his mouth when the clatter sounded again. This time is from the opposite end of the alley, the side that leads out into a small courtyard. He leans forward again, away from the wall, and takes a step in that direction. He squints again into the looming darkness, trying to spot what had caused this noise. Who's there? His voice echoes in the alley. It bounces against the brick walls. Sweat beaded down around his brow, and his hand moved to the revolver in his holster. He stops at the edge of the lamp's light circle, the edges flickering in time with the flame. He stares into the darkness. It looms around the periphery, swirling but never breaching the light's protective barrier. The hairs on the back of his neck rise. The silence of the night presses into his skin. It pops and sizzles against his ears. He swallows convulsively, nervously. The tension of his body itches and stretches from each passing moment. It felt like minutes, hours, days, but he knew that it had only been a couple of seconds, maybe 10, since the noise. The noise sounds again, but this time from the opposite end, towards the entrance. He quickly grabs his gun and points it in its direction, the barrel wavering with the tremors of his body. He licks his lip. He licks his lips, sharp puffs of air expelling into the night as his eyes dart widely. Stop fucking around and show yourself. The darkness presses against the light, seething. The silence presses in closer, suffocating. It batters against his senses and he shivers, cold sweat beating furiously against his skin. His shirt stuck to his back uncomfortably. The entryway to the alley is empty, light from the gas lamps illuminating the rectangular space. The uneasiness scratches and claws him. He knows that in order to get to the courtyard, you have to walk past him. He knows that there is no houses or doors bordering it. He knows there was no exit to the courtyard. He becomes aware of how alone he truly is. Heavy footsteps sound behind him, slow and measured as the person is just taking a leisurely stroll. The scuff and thunk of the boots pound against his chest. His heart dips low into his belly, frantically beating like the wings of a tiny bird. He spins again, pointing his gun at the footfalls. The barrel of his gun rattles like the tail of a viper as the footsteps get closer. He doesn't know if the harsh breathing is his. He can make out a shape, tall and posing in the darkness. It weaves and bobs with each step. Darkness gathers around its form, punching the barrier of the light. The lamp dims, shadows writhe, twisting and turning, arching against the waning light. His breath is quicker now, harsh and panicked as he tries to steady his gun. The sting of the burnt down cigarette vaguely registers in his mind as he brings his hand up. Stop where you are. His hands felt numb. The smooth metal of his gun feels muted against his fingertips. The acrid smell of his sweating form, the putrid stink of the alley gag him and he sways, dizzy from fear, anticipation, nerves. He can't tell. I'll fucking shoot. His fingers clumsily pull the latch of his gun, the grip wet from the sweat of his palms. He fumbles, eyes wild, dread pulling through him. His body is frozen, fingers poised over the trigger. God damn it, I will. But still, the footsteps come, closer and closer until they are almost upon him. He feels the cold grip of the darkness snake along his skin. The light flickers and sputters against it. He had to. He aims, closing his eyes as he fires into the darkness. The bang of the gun rings in his ears, his breathing frantic as he opens them, wildly searching. The alleyway is empty. There are no footsteps, no looming shadows. The light of the lamp flickers around him, bright, pushing the shadow back. His gun is still extended, pointing towards the courtyard. He lowers it, placing his hand against his sweat-covered face, scrubbing harshly, trying to steady his frantic heartbeats, the jarring of his breath. He turns his back to the shadows, hoping that the rest of the night will be better when he feels it. A prickling, worse than before. It goes across his neck, a grotesque lover's kiss. A deep sigh rattles against his ear. A face emerges from the shadow and over the side of his shoulder. He stays still, watching in abject horror as it turns towards him. Its eyes glow iridescent in the darkness. Deep, steady breath fans across his face. He remembers when he was a child, his father taking him hunting. He remembers his father pushing him down as a grizzly came charging out of the woods. He remembers the small, beady eyes watching him, the breath that spread across his face. It pushed his body with its sharp claws before lumbering away, leaving his father's body behind. The figure regards him, eyes staring unblinkingly until his, the man's breath coming out in sharp, rapid exhales. I smell blood. His voice grinds and vibrates. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand. The thing, beast, growls, and he wants to step away. He wants to move. He needs to move. The face moves closer and he flinches. He stays still, breath coming out in hitches, trapped. He knows if he moves, he's dead. The silence stretches, tight and sharp, pressing into his skin like a blade. Finally, the eyes slide away from him, their attention on the closed door of the gambling den. But not on your hands. It moves, taking the looming darkness with it. It completely smothers the lamp's light, bathing the alleyway in black. The pulsing pressure of the beast finally pushes him over the edge. He slumps against a wall, knocking his head harshly on the bricks. He feels the ground shaking beneath him. The beast wrenches open the door, light and laughter spilling into the alley. The occupants of the room stop their conversation, staring at the now open door in confusion. What the? The man hears a crack of a bone. He doesn't know which, but the accompanying screaming tells him that it must have been a major one. It only takes a moment for the others to break their stunned silence. What the fuck? Shoot it! Jesus fucking Christ! Gunshots ring out in the room. The screaming becomes frantic, louder as man after man meet their grisly end. The man covers his ears, humming to himself to block out the noise. The ground shakes and rolls under him. He sees the shadow of a man running for the door, but he never makes it. He watches the shadow man's neck break, his body falling to the ground like a rag doll. He squeezes his eyes shut. He hears the crashing of tables, groans of the wooden columns. He hears the large ornate chandelier crash to the ground. Another scream, glass tinkling, crunching. He presses his hands tighter to his ears. This must be hell. It has to be hell. He stays like that, hunched in an empty, dirty alleyway, hands covering his ears, eyes squeezed shut. It's a dream, it's a dream, it's a dream. He mutters to himself over and over. He jumps every time a new scream joins the chorus, every time a new shot rang out. He wondered vaguely where the police were. It's just a dream. The screaming soon turns into gurgling gasps. The silence that follows is the worst he's ever experienced. It rushes in, filling all the spaces where sound used to be. It cracks his ears, popping them so harshly that he wonders if they are bleeding. Maybe then he won't hear the screams. The smell of blood began to seep into the alley. He can taste it in his mouth, bitter and thick. He retches, bits of his voidance splashing his clothing. It mixes with the fetid stench of the alley, causing his stomach to roll once more. The ground heaves towards him. His shirt sticks to his chest and back, drenched with sweat. He feels a hand rest on his back. It's moved over his jacket, rubbing circles into the fabric. He sobs, back heaving against the hand. Another moves to his face, wiping the sweaty hair from his brow. He slowly opens his eyes. A woman kneels next to him, her expression sad. Her black hair is pulled back into two braids that wrap around her head. He can make out the deep brown of her skin, the brown of her eyes. It took a moment for him to realize that she was see-through. The yellow dress she wore was stained with dark patches that spread from her chest and abdomen. The smell of iron had grown stronger and his stomach rolls once more. She turns her head away from him and he follows her gaze. The man, beast, nightmare, stands in the light of the doorway, silently. He whimpers and presses against the wall away from it. The woman stands, her skirts floating around her feet as she moves towards it. She reaches for the creature's face, unbothered by the blood that splattered across it, cradling it in her ethereal hands. He watches as the creature's expression changes, morphs. It closes its eyes and leans into the touch. Love, regret, grief flit across its face, so fast that the man almost didn't see it. The woman, in turn, presses herself into its body and wraps its blood-covered arms around her. The man turns his gaze away. He felt ashamed, like he had just witnessed a private moment, a moment not meant for his eyes. At that moment, it had become more man than beast. But only for a moment. The creature's face contorts again, the light darkening as its presence flared anew. The woman touches the creature's face, the creature's chest, her voice a ghostly whisper, "Arthur." She fades away, and the creature's arms fall limply to its side. Its eyes glint again in the light, and the man knows he's watching him now. He waits in tense silence, awaiting whatever judgment befalls him. The creature steps towards him, slowly crouching down until his eyes are level with his. "Leave." The man scrambles to his feet, boots slipping in the mess. He runs out of the alley, the weight of what had transpired crashing into him as he races towards the street, towards safety. He explodes from the alley, running swiftly into the street. He doesn't look back. He'll never look back. If he did, he would have seen two glowing eyes slipping back into the darkness, leaving only carnage behind. That's it.
Woo!
That one
Yay!
that one was inspired by the fact that Agent Milton and Ross were just like, we're gonna bring a Gatling gun and we're gonna shoot all of you when they were in Rhodes before they like hightailed it.
Mm.
And so I was just like, what if they didn't escape before they got back? What would happen then? And so I wrote that. And because, RDR has a bunch of weird things.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I was just like, so what would happen if the strange man was just like, you have unfinished business. Awesome. I can turn you into a revenant to take exact revenge.
Revenge.
So I'm sorry if that was a little long.
Oh no.
I liked it.
But yeah, that was a revenant.
Our listeners.
Yay! And see, you said your writing is trash.
Well, I don't know if they're gonna like it. I don't know if you're gonna put this in the episode or leave it as a standalone as like a spooky Halloween story. Like an extra.
Who knows? I might end up, since I know I'm technically still recording, but I might take it and let it stand alone and then like on Halloween post it on its own thing.
Okay.
Because I still have the video of you sitting around the campfire, so.
Oh, okay. Well, that should work.
At some point, we also need to update our around the campfire footage because we've all changed clothes since then.
Yeah, we should probably do that. But since we have gone over and over and over, I think this is the end of our episode. So if you end up taking that out, this would be the part where we go.